In this peaceful spot by the River Brent in West London, St Mary's Perivale has stood for nearly 900 years. Surrounded by its peaceful churchyard, it has survived storms, wars, famines, plagues, and even developers. Acquired in 1976 by a charity set up for the purpose, it has now become one of the most important classical music venues in Britain. We're too small for orchestras, but our size and acoustics give us a perfect venue for chamber music and instrumental recitals. During the recent pandemic, we were not allowed to have a live audience, but we have not only survived but actually thrived by live streaming our concerts. Now, we are thrilled to be able to readmit an audience, but the live streams continue as an essential part of our offering. So, wherever you are, enjoy this concert. And please consider donating via our website. Thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon and welcome St Mary's Perivale, Slightly unusual show this afternoon because there's no music. So if you've come expecting a concert, you might like to tune into something else, because this is going to be a lecture about the past 20 years, and I'm in the wrong place, so I'll move over here. This is a lecture about this church and our various activities over the past 20 years. And the thing to say at the start is it's been a joint enterprise with a huge number of people involved over many years, building it up to what it is now. It's a fun story, and I thought it was time just to present an overview and put it in the public domain, just so people have some idea of what's been going on here. So I'll go on to the first slide. Oh, well, this is what happens when you give talks. I don't bet. Oh, that's it. That's a drone view of our beautiful church, St Mary's Perivale. It's really for the benefit people watching online who won't know. It's a tiny church, holds about 70 people. It dates back to the 12th century. It's in the middle of a golf course. It's very rural, but it's only 6 miles from Marble Arch. So pretty near the centre of London, but pretty rural. Has wonderful acoustics, perfect for music making, and that's the subject of our talk. It's this gorgeous little church. So, it dates back to around 1135, capacity only 70. It's a listed building, which in Britain means that it's identified as of special historic significance, stunningly beautiful, most beautiful concert venue you could imagine, has perfect acoustics, which, considering it's 800 years ago old, they must have known about those things in those days. It has a rural setting, only 6 miles from Marble Arch. It obviously has a very long history, pre-1972, which is very interesting, but I covered that on a talk which is on YouTube, so if you're interested, you can have a look at that after the talk. Anyway, in 1972, this little church was made redundant. That's because the congregation numbers fell to an unsustainable level. There was another church built about a mile away, and so the church was closed, boarded up, and for 4 years it was vandalized. And the church authorities didn't know what to do with it, and they tried to sell it off to an architect, to be an architect's studio. It's a pretty awful thing to do, but they were trying to do something with it. Fortunately, planning permission for the church to become an architect's studio was opposed by a gentleman called Alan Gillett and friends, and we owe Alan a huge debt of gratitude for stepping in then and saving the building in effect. And he formed the Friends of St Mary's Perivale, which was founded in 1976. And he ran it for 28 years or so, and they put on a varied program of events in those days, a few concerts, lots of exhibitions, a lot of amateur dramatics, which was this big thing, and a lot of social events. And it wasn't better or worse in those days, it was just different. It was fine. It was before the days of broadcasting and the internet and all the rest of it, and it was an excellent organisation, but it was of a different era. The thing that limited it as far as music making was that the piano was pretty mediocre, and it wasn't good enough to attract really good musicians. That's Alan, the gentleman with the bald head in the middle. I think that's when they're signing the deed for the place. The gentleman on his right, on our left, the younger man, is John Biggs. He's not here this afternoon, but he's still a trustee of the church. We owe him a huge debt of gratitude. This is nearly 50 years ago, and he's still involved with the church intimately. So that's a wonderful achievement. This is a picture from one of those early events. There's Alan. The gentleman next to him is Robin McGibbon, who played a key role also in running the organisation in those days. They had some pretty uncomfortable red chairs which kept you awake all the time because they were so uncomfortable, and they put on a lot of literary events and talks and that sort of thing. Now I have to put a personal note in here. In 1982 I moved to Ealing because I got a job at the local hospital running the diabetes service, which was my specialty, and but I was always really a musician. I was just not good enough at playing the piano to earn my living, so I did medicine. But I tried to keep both going over the years. It's much easier to make a living as a doctor than as a musician, and so that was me. And in 1986 I gave my first piano recital here. That's nearly 40 years ago, and thereafter I gave recitals here every year or two over the next 20 years or so. But it was obvious that we were very limited by the piano, which was old and fairly decrepit. And in 2003, I organised the purchase of a new Yamaha C3 grand piano. Here we are. It's been terrific, this instrument, ever since, and we'll talk about it more anon. But in September 2004, I started organising concerts. My medical career was coming to an end, and in 2005, I took over from Alan Gillett, who'd done a fantastic job as chairman of Friends of St Mary's, Perivale. This is the programme of that recital on Sunday, 22nd of June 1986, a piano recital, and I couldn't get over this programme. I'd forgotten all about it. The programme in the first half was Schubert's Wanderer Fantasy, followed by Schumann's Fantasy, two huge works. Then after interval I played the Liszt B minor. I would have played them all from memory, and at the time I was involved in a lot of diabetes epidemiology research, so I was fairly busy in those days, but it's amazing that I could have got through it. I must have got through it somehow. Anyway, that's the piano arriving in 2003, the new instrument, and that was the key thing which transformed the place. And from 2004 onwards, the first concert of the new era was on the 11th of September 2004. And from then on, we had a much narrower focus on classical music and lots of high-quality classical concerts. And now the total of classical concerts, or concerts of all sorts, it was 1,463. That's till the summer holidays. We've had about 10 since then. And these are all detailed on our website archive, which we've kept going ever since. So if you go to our website and you search hard enough, you can find the archive section. And this is the first page of it. And you'll see on the 11th of September, you won't be able to see from where you are, but you can if you go on the internet, that Viv McLean, a great friend, played Bach and Schubert. On the 15th of September, I played Beethoven's Hammerklavier Sonata, which was my party piece in those days, and in the second half, I played the Schubert B-flat trio with two friends, Paul Willie and Nigel Blomley, and so it goes on. And there's pages and pages of this on the website with details of all the concerts right up to this week. That's what the church looked like in those days. It looks pretty similar, really. But we had those old chairs, fewer of them, and but otherwise it's pretty similar. But if you look the other way, that's what the East End looked like. And you'll see this picture was taken about 2006 or so, when we'd got our new chairs, which are still here and which have served us very well. We bought 70 of those. But you'll see that the piano was marooned at the top of the chancel because there is a step halfway up the chancel. I don't know if you can see that from where you are, around there. there was a little step, but little step was enough to preclude bringing the piano down because it would have bust the pedals. So the piano was stuck there right at the far end, and it was totally unsatisfactory for concerts. That's what it looked like. You can see it was crammed up right against the east end there. And we weren't quite sure what to do about this. But then we had the solution, and it was very hard to have this done. There were all sorts of objections raised from historical bodies and all the rest of it, because it's a Grade 1 listed building. But anyway, eventually we got permission and got it through, and you'll see that we got rid of the step by putting breeze blocks and then retiling the whole of the chancel on a single level. And it doesn't sound much of an improvement, but that transformed this as a venue, and everything that happened subsequently couldn't have happened if we were stuck with this step and the piano marooned up there. The person who organised that was this gentleman, John Hummerston, who's an architect, a very nice man. He now lives in the West Country. He doesn't know about this talk. If you know John, you better tell him. He's a wonderful man, and he pioneered this through, and we have a huge debt of gratitude to John for making it happen. So, you can see the difference now. This is a picture of the chancel on one level and the piano pushed right forward, as we do for all our piano recitals. And you'll also see the new lighting, the beautiful lighting that shows up this glorious ceiling. That was installed by Andrew Whadcoat fairly recently, and has also been a huge factor in transforming it. And you'll see what a beautiful venue it is. You can't tell me of any venue in London that looks as attractive as that does. Anyway, so we have our perfect concert venue and a perfect piano. And to summarise all the concerts that have gone on, those 1,463 concerts, is very difficult. But just to the general layout, for the first 10 or 11 years, we had about 50 concerts a year. And these used to happen on Wednesday evenings, which would be a double concert. We'd have something in the first half, about 45 minutes, quick break, then another 45 minutes. And that alternated with Sunday afternoon concerts, and that went on for over 10 years. In 2016, Roger Nellist, who'd become closely involved with the organisation, proposed that we started having additional piano recitals on Tuesday afternoons, simply because there were so many wonderful pianists and we simply could not fit them in to those 50 concerts. And it was Roger's idea. I was a bit doubtful about it, but once we started them, I didn't know whether we'd get an audience. At 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, we do get an audience, and they've been terrific ever since. So from then on, instead of 50 concerts, we had another 50 piano recitals. So it was 100 concerts a year from 2017 onwards, which is a hell of a lot for any concert organisation. Then there was a pandemic, of which more anon. But after the pandemic, we switched from having evening concerts to concerts on 3 afternoons a week, Sunday, Tuesday and Thursday, and each of them are 60 minutes duration without an interval. That format works very well for us, and we now have about 120 concerts a year. Over half of those are piano recitals. Now, the number of musicians who've played in these concerts over 20 years is pretty huge. This is a list of 500 pianists. It just happens to be exactly 500, not about 500. 500 pianist names who've played at the church in the last 20 years. And it's quite interesting, if you are a pianist, to look up and see how many times you've played. A lot of famous names there. And so that's 500 pianists. And as I say, this list is on the website. It's in the public domain. And it turns out that there were 500 pianists, 210 violinists, 130 cellists, 70 viola players, 38 string quartets, 34 piano trios, 28 other ensembles, etc., etc., etc. A lot of chamber music, as you can see. And if you look at the pianists, first of all, well, I suppose our piano recitals have become our niche product because there are so many wonderful pianists around London and they're all desperate for opportunities to play. This is a picture of Julian Trevelyan, as it happens. Julian got to the finals of the Leeds last weekend, got 5th prize, a hell of an achievement. And you can see again what a gorgeous venue it is and how close you are to the piano. You could hardly have a better venue for piano recitals. When it comes to who's played the most in these things, this is slightly embarrassing. It turns out that I win. I played 86 concerts, but they were mainly chamber music and mainly early on. I don't play very much now. I'm getting old. My fingers are getting a bit stiff. And I leave the younger players to do it all. Viv McLean, my close friend, has played 73. He's not old, he plays wonderfully. A lot of that's chamber music, also solo recitals. When you come to pianists who just come every year or so and give them piano recitals, the list is headed by Ashley Fripp, 25, Meng Yang Pan, Margaret Fingerhut, Mark Viner, Dinara Clinton, Mishka Merman, Katerina Groiver, Sasha Green, etc. The thing that distinguishes them all is they've been coming for almost 20 years. So if they've been doing a recital every year, it's added up over the years. We have so many pianists who've just been coming 5 or 10 years, so they're lower down the list. My big problem is always selecting pianists to perform, and it really is a headache because we've had 500 pianists since 2004, of whom about 200 are still around. They've not died and they've not emigrated or whatever, and I've got about 200 who would probably like to give a recital here, and I receive emails from across Europe all the time asking for recital slots. And it is very difficult keeping them all happy, and because there are very few London venues that have the combination of the good piano, an audience that's keen, and they actually get paid. In central London churches, the lunchtime recitals, as a general rule, they're not paid, which is pretty awful, and I don't know how they get away with it, but they're not paid. We pay. They currently get £260 for their recital, which is not a fortune, but it's not nothing either. And we're inundated with people wanting to come. And of course, the other thing they get is a wonderful recording. We'll come on to that later. So we have 65 recital slots trying to cope with 200 pianists, and it just doesn't fit, clearly. We've spread them out so that our favourite pianists get dates every 18 months or so, and we try to spread the jam as fairly as possible. It's always very difficult, and there'll be a lot of pianists out there, maybe who see this presentation, who are a bit cheesed off that I've not given them a date. I agonise over it, and I do try very hard to slip them all in if I possibly can. There's always a tension between the new kids on the block, the latest genius who's come to study at the college or the academy from elsewhere in the world, versus our old friends. We've always had an emphasis on younger pianists, and that emphasis will continue. Just wanted to emphasize that it's not easy keeping them all happy. Our problem isn't not enough musicians, it's far too many, and keep being kind to them all. This gentleman here is Michael Lewis. He comes across having a very red face for some reason on that screen. It doesn't usually. He's a wonderful man, and he's a key figure in the success of St Mary's Perivale over the last 2 decades. He looks after the piano and has done since the day it arrived. He's a genius piano technician. It's a hugely difficult art. He spends many hours fiddling with this piano, which is a bog standard Yamaha. It's not special. It cost £10,500 in 2003. The equivalent Steinway would have been about 50,000. And yet he makes it sound like a Steinway because he keeps it to such a high degree of perfection. This is another picture of him a week or two ago. We've had all the lower strings, the bass strings there, renewed this summer. A lot of work done on the piano, and there he is fiddling around. It's a highly specialized business, and I can't overemphasize how much we owe him, because we couldn't get all these world-class pianists to come here and play on some rubbish instrument. When it comes to violinists, the one name that springs out is Fenella Humphreys, who's now got quite a big career. Fenella's doing awfully well, and she doesn't half deserve it, because she's a wonderful player, charming woman, and is Ealing born and bred. She's moved away now, but she still comes back occasionally, and for many years put on chamber music concerts here, which were really memorable. And so we owe Fenella a big debt of gratitude. And the next picture has our 2 local musicians who tended to dominate the ratings, as it were, Viv McLean and Fenella Humphreys, both locals, both wonderful musicians, and they're terrific. Thank you, both of them. Well, in addition to solo piano, and we have chamber music. The thing that really works best here are these big chamber groups, big ensembles, because the acoustics here are superb. And if you get an octet or something in this place, it sounds like a symphony orchestra. That there is a performance of the Schubert Octet, which most musicians would be able to identify by the combination of the instruments involved. And we've had that several times. We've had the Mendelssohn Octet probably 10 times over the years. Works wonderfully here. And the biggest piece we put on is the Mozart Grand Partita K361, which is one of the best chamber masterpieces ever written, for either 13 wind instruments or 12 wind instruments and a bass. And you can see they're crammed into here. You can imagine what it's like. The piano's right in the corner there, and it sounds terrific, and that's been one of our highlights. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we've gone over to having jazz concerts on a monthly basis, so about 10 a year. And they've been immensely successful. And it was the idea of Rob Jenkins, who's doing the broadcast and handling the cameras as I speak. It was his idea. He has a background in jazz and has all the contacts. And it's been a huge addition to our range of music, and has gone down very well. And the last jazz concert about 3 weeks ago, the place was completely full. So we'll continue with this. We also have a visit every year from the Liszt Society. That's Leslie Howard, who's a very famous pianist, recorded the whole of Liszt, eminent man, and by him Mark Weiner, who's a wonderful pianist of Liszt and Alcan. And they have their day here, which comprises a recital, an AGM, and then an international competition. So in effect, we have about 6 Liszt recitals during the course of the day. Piano gets a good workout, and it's a wonderful day's music. We've also had a series of talks with eminent musicians. These are arranged alphabetically. Peter Donahoe, Christopher Elton, Norma Fisher, Peter Frankel, etc. Arranged alphabetically, mainly pianists. some violinists, and they're amazing documents because some of them really do have historic value. It's all, well, reading accounts of people's lives when you read their accounts written down, but when you hear them speak them and articulate them, it gives them a certain resonance, and most of these are still available on YouTube. And I think particularly of the talk Georgi Pauk, the eminent Hungarian, well, originally Hungarian violinist, gave here about his amazing life, particularly in Budapest in 1944, where he was a young boy in the ghetto there and all that. Wonderful man. He happened to have been here 3 days ago because one of his pupils played. So that's a picture of me talking to Georgi Pauk, who I think is one of the most impressive men I've ever met. Fantastic bloke. Then we go on to other uses. This church is still consecrated. It's redundant and so forth, but it's still consecrated. Some people think I'm a vicar. I'm not really. But I play the piano for these lovely services we have, and we're very indebted to Reverend Valerie Aitken, who comes and does the honours. This is our carol service with our big Christmas tree in the corner, and this is our annual carol service. And we also have an annual harvest festival, which was last weekend, with all the produce from the local allotments decorating the church. It's nice to keep these traditions of worship going. I'm an Anglican, and this has been hosting Christian worship for about 800 years. Long may it continue. I've left to now any mention of the big advance in the past 20 years, which has to be our involvement in recording and broadcasting facilities, which was simply unheard of when I started being involved in this church. And from humble beginnings 20 years ago to our current setup has been a long journey. We now have 10 high-definition cameras spread all around the church, 6 microphones, a host of ancillary equipment, and this has been a remarkable and totally unexpected transformation of this ancient building into a totally different function. And it is all the brainchild of Simon Shute, who's at the back of the church now, to whom we owe a huge debt for all this activity. This is Simon upstairs in the gallery. That's what the gallery looks like. Most of you won't have been up there. All that high-tech equipment set against a background of those beams. Those beams date from about 1450. So it's a nice juxtaposition of new and old. And there are all the monitors. And Simon has introduced all this work with help from his colleagues. This is how it happened. In 2007, he installed a single standard definition camera to record concerts for musicians. And that was the idea. It was a little memento. They weren't exactly high-tech with standard definition, but we used to have they'd get a DVD afterwards and I would post it to them. And it was a nice memento of their performance. In 2009, we started uploading some of the best ones of these to YouTube, and this was done by George Auckland, who's in the audience, who had already developed our website, which was a very important part of our progress as well, and had developed the software to upload some of our highlights to YouTube. And over the next few years, from 210 to 214, further standard definition cameras were added, second, third and fourth, spread around the church to have different angles on the performance. And in September 2016, we went for broke and installed 6 high-definition cameras. Again, it was for recording. At that stage, there was no thought of broadcasting. It was simply as a means of giving the performance a nice recording of their music making. And in December 2018, we started broadcasting live. The broadcasts were in standard definition because the phone line across the golf course wasn't sufficient high bandwidth to be able to do in high definition, so it wasn't high tech. And I thought at that time, I have to say, I was a non-believer, and I went along with it because I thought it was keeping my technical colleagues happy and busy, giving them something to do, whilst the main thing was running the concerts here for the audience in the church. And I never thought it would take off as an important part of our activities. But then, in March 2020, the world changed. As everyone knows, the pandemic hit us, and the lockdown hit us, and all the chairs were put away, and all concerts were banned for at least 14 months. And this paradoxically was our big opportunity, because we already had our cameras and everything in place to start broadcasting, whereas very few other venues were equipped to do so. It was actually our golden opportunity. The only other venues who, when we started broadcasting live concerts in June 2020, were the Wigmore Hall. I don't know whether we were following them or they were following us, a bit of both, and the Berlin Phil. Apart from that, there was no other place who were broadcasting because they didn't have the facilities to do it. Because we'd set it up before, we were in prime position. So, for the April and May, at the start of the lockdown, we broadcast 53 old concert recordings on a daily basis. And then starting in June, for the next 14 months, we put out 154 live concerts from here, from the empty church. And the only people in the church were the musicians, me, introducing it, and a recording engineer. So it complied with the lockdown regulations, and we put on 154 concerts in that time. And these received over 200,000 views on YouTube and Vimeo, basically for people who were stuck at home. And it was a way of keeping contact with live music making. And in that time, we paid £50,000 to the musicians who played. And this is at a difficult time when many of them suddenly had no income at all. If they'd been getting all their income from concerts, all concerts stopped. So this was very valuable for them. That's despite not receiving any external funding or grants, and it was all from donations. Now, this was noted by a group called the Critics Circle, who are a prestigious group of arts critics, and they prepared this citation, which we did not know about. It's not as though we'd written our own script. But they gave us this award. It reads as follows, because you won't be able to read it from the back. St Mary's Perivale, a tiny Grade 1 listed redundant church in West London, has punched far above its weight with the range and quality of its streamed recitals. Dr. Hugh Mather and the team, all volunteers, carried on with their 3 weekly, that's 3 times a week, not every 3 weeks, 3 times a week recitals when COVID hit, providing young artists with paid employment and a platform during this hardest of times, raising their own funds, largely through donations, to pay the artists without any public subsidies. Both the quality of the concerts on offer and the diversity of performers and repertoire put the response of many larger subsidised venues to shame. The concerts were streamed live using very high quality equipment installed by 2 former BBC engineers, Simon Shute and George Auckland. well, this was a very nice tribute. It's up on the wall there for the people in the church. And there's me receiving it from Stephen Pettit, who's a friend and an eminent critic. And these are our three technical geniuses. Simon in the middle. To his left, as we look at it, is George Auckland. As I say, was responsible for the website and all the software development for YouTube and for much else besides. And to the right, as we look at it, is Andrew Whadcoat, who's joined the team more recently and is another technical genius who's helped install all the lighting and so much more besides. They're a fantastic team. All three of them were trained at the BBC, and we're just fortunate that a lot of BBC staff live in Ealing. For those who are watching from afar, BBC have a big centre in West London, so a lot of their staff tend to live locally, and we've been the beneficiaries of that. We owe them a huge debt of gratitude. This is Rob Jenkins, who's upstairs. He would die of shock when he sees his picture. Rob has a background as a sound engineer and has got involved in the last 5 years or so and has transformed our sound broadcasts, the quality of the sound, with special microphones and much else besides, and also helped introduce the jazz concerts and is a very important member of our team now. So huge thanks to Rob for everything. This is a very sad picture of a colleague called Truce Bose, a charming woman, key member of the team, unfortunately developed motor neuron disease a year ago and passed away very suddenly and unexpectedly about 3 weeks ago, and funeral is in a week or two. We're all terribly upset by this. She was absolutely lovely woman. We're all terribly fond of her. Bright, intelligent, charming. And it's very upsetting. And I'd like to dedicate this talk to her memory. This is a picture of the church taken from where the piano is, right in the middle there. It's to show you where all these cameras are. I keep telling you there are about 10 cameras, but most people never see where they are. This is you see these pillars here for the audience in the church. There are cameras hidden just behind them. They're there and there. Okay? And then in the nave windows, there's one there and one there. So that's 4 cameras. There are also another 4 cameras on the beams at the top there that don't come out very clearly there. You'll have to take my word for it. But there are 8 cameras in that picture. Most very well hidden. You wouldn't be aware of them. And above my head here, there's 2 microphones. And that little thing up there, which is a tiny fixed camera which focuses on the piano keyboard in piano recitals. It's just at the right place. That beam is in the perfect position for us. It's required to stop the chancel falling down, but also performs a wonderful job in being just the right place for our special camera. So that's the view it produces. And this is one of our key things in all our piano recital broadcasts, is our view of the hands. And you get an astonishing view, particularly in virtuoso piano music where the hands are whizzing around and crossing and all the rest of it. It gives you a new insight into piano playing, this overhead camera. There's also another camera here tucked away at the back of the church. Fairly well hidden. It focuses on the audience, so it's best not to fall asleep in concerts here. That's focusing, you see, on the left hand of the player. Those very nice, delicate fingers actually belonged to Junyan Chen, a Chinese girl who came and played here a couple of months ago and got silver medal in the Leeds piano competition last weekend. So she's done very well for herself. And you see what a close-up view you have of the hands. So we have 10 different views of the keyboard, which is pretty astonishing, and all in wonderful high definition. So now we put on 110 live broadcasts a year. We have about a few concerts are done by local amateur organisations. We don't broadcast, but effectively all our concerts done by professionals are broadcast, and they have to stay up for 3 weeks. Even if they make a few wrong notes, they're not allowed to say, I'm not very happy with that performance, can you take it down? I mean, the deal is it stays there for 3 weeks. After that, we'll take it down if they're unhappy. And about 80% of musicians leave them up indefinitely. And of course, there's no paywall, so they're freely available, in effect forever. And there's over 500 concert recordings now on YouTube, including, the last count, 190 unedited live solo piano recitals. You couldn't possibly start wanting to watch the whole lot of those, but it's an interesting repository of all these wonderful pianists who've been here, and it's very useful for them, of course, in their publicity. These receive 100,000 views a year in 70 plus countries around the world. They're of professional technical qualities, and in addition, we've been recording all our concerts since 2016, whether they've been taken down or not broadcast or whatever. We have high definition copies of them all stored in the cloud, so it's about 1,000 concerts. So our modus operandi now has changed entirely from what it was 5 or 6 years ago. We're dealing with two audiences. The audience here in the church, numbering 20 to 70. You provide the atmosphere, the applause, and the money, because you actually dig into your pockets. It's a bit more difficult with our virtual audience, but our virtual audience are around the world, and there are about 40 or 50 concurrent viewers usually. I don't know how many watching this, but they join in, a few of them, with our live chat, which is a little group who discuss performances 3 times a week. And over the next few weeks, each broadcast is seen by about 300 to 500 people later on. And this, of course, is terribly important for these young musicians, that their performances are seen by people interested in piano playing or violin playing or whatever around the world. They can't come to Perivale, but they can see these musicians, and of course, seeing and hearing them play is far better advert for their skills than just having a written review saying how good it was. So we serve both audiences now, and we regard them both as equally important. Just to show you roughly how it works, this is a screenshot. This is from last Tuesday, 5 days ago, and we had a great recital from Connor Herity, a wonderful pianist, who's actually a local lad. Anyway, you'll see the live chat over there. Greetings from Toronto. Eva, who lives in Poland, good afternoon. Then Joe Michael further down, he lives in South Africa. Marty lives in New York. There's a few others as well. There's a group of perhaps 8 or 10 people who watch our broadcast, and it's a little community, but it's astonishing that the concert going on here can be enjoyed simultaneously in South Africa, Toronto, New York, and Poland and lots of other places around the world. You can't get your head around it. If you told you that 30 or 40 years ago, it'd be science fiction. And it's not a matter of seeing a recording later. They're actually enjoying the frisson of a live performance. We're helped in our publicity on Facebook by Christopher Axworthy, who's a well-known figure in the piano world, is immensely authoritative, and he writes very perceptive reviews about them all on Facebook, and this helps to spread the word about our recitals, our piano recitals, and I had to put that in because we're very grateful to Christopher for all his support over the years. He must have written about 200 of these reviews of our concerts. So, live streaming of classical concerts. We think it is a major new way of enjoying live concerts. The feeling was, in central London perhaps, that once the pandemic was over, no one would be watching streaming anymore. They'd all be coming back to concerts. Well, that's all right if you can get to Bond Street and to Wigmore Hall very easily, but most people can't. And there's a huge potential audience there who can't travel to major concert venues. To say the obvious, people who are elderly, they're disabled, family commitments, live too far away, can't afford the concert ticket or travel. All our broadcasts are free. They can't face 2 journeys there and back, especially journeying back at night with all the drunks on the tube, but who still enjoy the extra frisson of a live event. And there's a huge audience out there. This is a different and a very valid way of enjoying classical concerts. When the Leeds competition was on a week or 2 ago, there were about 10,000 people watching, 10,000 concurrently. We get about 40, but our musicians are of that sort of calibre. 2 of the finalists were our pianists, and so there's a huge audience out there. We just have to reach them. We believe in it. I think the reason why many other venues have stopped doing it is that you don't get much funds out of people watching from afar. Anything on the internet is regarded as free, which is fine, because I'm more interested in helping our young people with their careers rather than getting money from the audience. And it works very well. We aim to lead the way, but we're still trying to get better publicity. I want to stress that everything that's happened here has been done as a joint effort by many people involved. And this is a picture from about 4 or 5 years ago of our executive committee, hard at work planning things. We meet regularly, and it's a very active and harmonious team. And these are a lot of people I need to acknowledge. First of all, Roger Nellist, who's vice chairman, who's done a huge amount for the organisation in recording so many concerts, in pioneering the introduction of piano recitals, and so much else besides. Then we have our technical team led by Simon Shute, with George Auckland, Andrew Whadcoat, Rob Jenkins, Peter Sanderson, who's here in the audience, and poor Truce Boss, who's sadly isn't. Then we have the 3 people involved in sorting out the donations and the money: Andrew Goodhart, Richard Norris, who's been our treasurer for 20 years, and Jill Rowley, who's in charge of publicity, box office, and so many other things as well. Then we have our box office team, which is Sherry White, who's a terrific supporter of everything to do with the church. Jill Rowley, I've just mentioned, and Felicity Mather, who's been my wife for 52 years and backs me up with everything, and I owe her more than I can possibly say in public. Then we have the trustees: Andrew Goodhart, who's chairman of the trustees, John Biggs, who you saw on a very early picture 50 years ago, John Newbegin, who sorts out our legal affairs, and Reverend Valerie Aiken, who takes all the services. Then we have David Brown, Judith Price, Genevieve, who I should have put on that list, and the gardening team who help to keep our churchyard straight. This is some mug shots. To the left, as you look at it, to the left of me is Andrew Goodhart, chairman of the trustees, and handles all the donations. To the right is Roger Nellist, and to his right is Richard Norris. They all come out as having rather red faces, where it looks as though we're having a jolly time. I'm not quite sure why that is. Don't take too much notice of that, but each of them has done a huge amount for this organisation. This is the box office team, Sherry White on the left, my wife Felicity in the middle, and Jill Rowley on the right. Fantastic team holding our certificate. And this is Stanley Clark, who's in the audience, who did box office duties here for about 15 years, pretty well every concert. So it must be 1,000 concerts or so. A huge supporter of the place, and I certainly couldn't give a talk about the church over the last 20 years without mentioning him. Then we have Eileen and Reg Eden. Eileen has sadly has passed away, and Reg is in a home. But Eileen did our recordings for the first 10 years or so, and was also our archivist, and did a tremendous amount of research on the history of the church. We owe her an enormous vote of thanks. May she rest in peace. Wonderful woman. This is, sorry about this, folks. The people I really want to thank are our loyal audience. This is a rotten picture taken on Tuesday of some of my friends in the front row who come every time, regardless of the weather, regardless of whether the program looks boring, whether it looks like an unknown pianist playing a whole concert of Prokofiev or something like that. They'll still be there. Paul, Fanny, Eric and Alan, and we're incredibly grateful to them. Sorry to embarrass you, but I thought you deserved it. I couldn't give a talk without patting them on the back. This is the churchyard, which is absolutely gorgeous, and I haven't time to go into everything that's happened there over the last 20 years. Suffice to say that we have a team every Thursday morning who come and keep it straight and do all the things necessary. We call it our gardening team, and many of them are here today. And this is a picture of the gardening team many years ago. This is after we first started. The gardening team was originally run by the lady, the bottom centre, whose name is Camilla Newbegin. She ran the team for about 10 or 15 years, and there they are, very keen. And then this is a more recent group on a Thursday morning, now run by David Brown, who's on the left. Genevieve's close to him, and Rob, a whole lot of people. You see what a big enterprise it is and what an excellent community it is, and they keep the churchyard straight. Well, that's it really. The next 20 years, who knows? For what it's worth, everyone keeps asking, am I going to retire? The answer is I have no plans to do so for the moment. I will be 80 next year, but that's in the mind, you know. I think life goes on. 80 is not very different from 79. And I have no plans to retire, but having been in acute medicine for all my professional life, I've seen enough people come to sudden sticky ends. That's what happens. So who knows what's going to happen? It is very difficult firming up succession plans and sorting it out. So I honestly don't know what will happen. But the broadcasting facilities that have been so brilliantly installed in the church will last, I'm told, till at least 2030. So we're going to keep going, and we'll see what the next few years bring. And long may it continue. And that's all I've got to say, really, except to thank everyone on our big team, and particularly those who I haven't thanked. It's very difficult with this sort of talk, getting the balance right and thanking everyone and not leaving people out. I'm sure difficult, but enough to say it's been a wonderful enterprise the last 20 years. It's kept me occupied, and long may it continue. And I think we can have questions from the audience, and that's it. Thank you very much. Anyone want to ask anything? Stunned into silence. Stanley.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take you back further than where Hugh started. It's nearly 1 o'clock, and it's a Friday. And where are we? We're outside the Medical Room Centre Lecture Theatre at Ealing Hospital. There are patients, there are medics, there are professional people, there are nurses, there are passerbys, there are people who just come. We're all going into the medical centre, medical room, because it is not used for lectures between 1 and 2 on a Friday. Because a certain gentleman who happened to be, I believe at the time, chairman of the medical staff committee, had commandeered it. And just on 1 o'clock, he would enter, along with someone else. It could be male, female, young or old. And this person would sit down at the piano, and Hugh would do an introduction. And yes, this is where Hugh started, being his impresario. And he kept that up until he retired. He might not remember, but I actually introduced and closed the final concert. And we had an interesting, because occasions we had a full piano concerto, reduced with one pianist playing the piano and someone else doing the piano transcription. And when we had that many a time. So Hugh retired, and what happened? He started getting involved more and more with his place. And I became the box office. And I did that up until COVID, where we now introduced a more modern system rather than me counting money. So Hugh, thank you for the opportunity I've had to listen to so much good music with very pleasant company. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanley. That's appreciated. Thank you, Stanley. Brings back happy memories of those hospital concerts. Anyone else want to ask a question? You're all stunned into silence, I think. Right. Yeah. There you are, Roger.
Hello. I'm just wondering, how did you finance all this brilliant equipment that you've got here?
How did we buy it?
Yeah, how did you finance it?
Finance it? Well, it didn't cost much to get it installed. I think that's the key. We bought it. My technical friends, led by Simon Shute, bought the stuff and installed it all. I think when you get a firm to quote for installing some technical thing like that, I would guess about a third goes into the kit and 2/3 goes into the manpower time. They've all given of their huge expertise free for the last 20 years, which is how it's all happened. It couldn't have happened otherwise. And we've raised it all from concerts. We've never had any grants. The Wigmore received £1 million in the lockdown, we got nothing. Most of us are on nice public sector pensions. I'm not exactly broke. And we don't have to pay to the use of this building, but we have to maintain it. And our accounts are in the public domain. And we cover it by donations.
Anyone else?
Sorry,
Caroline.
Caroline.
It must take an enormous amount of time trying to organise concerts, to find people of the right quality, and then to make the arrangements. And that must take a lot of time, Hugh.
Well, it does, but it's very pleasurable. I sit in a chair with a laptop firing off emails. Most musicians are fairly organised, and if they're not organised, they don't survive long. And I've been very rarely let down. I have a system of writing a year before. I'm booking concerts for November, December next year. Then 3 months before, I'll write for their programme. Then a fortnight before, I will write to ask them what time they want to come and practice. But in actual fact, it's just saying, you're not going to mess me about, are you? And it works, but we have to have something to keep our little brains ticking over, and it keeps my brain ticking over. Angela.
Angela.
Hi. You quite often say, Hugh, you've got quite a long waiting list of musicians wanting to come and play here. And I was here recently for the fantastic Japanese violinist and her equally fantastic pianist, who are literally world-class musicians who'd come all the way on a very wet afternoon to a little church in a London suburb. Could you tell us a little bit more about how many people you have on your list and how many people you have on your waiting list, and maybe the proportion of the different instruments that you've got on there?
Yes, thank you, Angela. I have a real problem, particularly with pianists, because, as I said in that, there are my talk, about 200 I could ask. I actually have a little grading system which no one's allowed to see. But out of those 200, I think 50 I definitely want to have again, 60 I probably want to have again, 90 I possibly want to have again. But I do try and be fair to them all, because they're all desperate to play. And if one pianist keeps playing all the time, it's just not fair on the others. So in general, we have a list of about 80 pianists. They're in the public domain now to play over the next 14 months. But there's only one of them. I've just given one of them another date for the end of next year. But this is very rare. And I do try and be as fair as I can. If they're not out, if there's a new person writes, unless they've won something special, I don't get them along, because our audience are used now to a very high caliber performance. And so I go on their CVs and what they've won and decide whether they're good enough to come. But I always write back. I never leave emails unanswered, and I try and help as best I can, because it's very rough on them. And I know, because being a pianist of sort myself, it's a very tough game. I think that's the best I can do. William.
Thank you very much, Hugh, for a wonderful talk and for all your 20 years of wonderful hard work to preserve this building and its work. I'd like to pay tribute to my late wife, Anne Furno, who I met here. I came to a New Year's Day thing. I was out walking my dog and I thought, I wonder if there's a concert on in St Mary's Perivale. I came in and I augmented the audience by one man and a dog, and there was this lovely lady serving tea. And I looked at her and we both sort of thought, oh, he's nice, I hope he comes again. And I'm thinking, oh, she's nice, I hope she's here next time. Anyway, over the years we met and got talking and we got married, and very sadly she died nearly 4 years ago in November. But when Alan Gillette was first trying to save this church, she was attending, I think it was the Hanwell Historical Society, and a very agitated, distressed Alan Gillette came in and said, oh, I'm sorry to intrude, but he said, we desperately need to save St Mary's because there's an architect who wants to take it over and turn it into studios. And Anne had was a lecturer at what's now University of West London, and she taught law. And of course, law is a huge topic, but she taught business law. And so she said, oh, I think I'll come and help you. And she, in fact, did take Alan Gillette, plus somebody else in the thing, to the Church of England headquarters in somewhere near Victoria, and they sorted out the lease of this building to the Friends of St Mary's. So thank you to Anne, and thank you to Alan, and to Hugh, and everybody else who keeps this place going. And I've enjoyed playing here too, also with you, Hugh, in the past, haven't we, Hugh?
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you very much anyway.
I think that's it, really. I'll do it. It's on. It's on.
Thank you. Well, we all need to thank Hugh. To thank you so very much for this fascinating and thoughtful and indeed gracious presentation. It's amazing what you have achieved over the last 20 plus years, really. You didn't mention St. Barnabas and all the concerts you ran there. That was, what, nearly 700, something like that, until the COVID came, and 600 or more at Ealing Hospital. So the total is almost approaching 3,000, I think. That is truly amazing. And for the record, today, this broadcast, we've had 47 people watching around the world, including our friends in New York and Washington and South Africa and Poland. So, I mean, it truly is amazing to think that in this 900-year-old church, we are being watched and commented on by people from all over. Sometimes there's somebody in California who gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning in order to watch the broadcast. There's people in Brazil, India, Melbourne, all over. But let's thank you for today. But also, of course, we very much need to thank you and Felicity for providing 20 years of superb live classical concerts right on our doorstep here, so we don't have to traipse into central London to enjoy all these wonderful musicians and the music that they play. So I think you deserve another round of applause. May it long continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rapturous applause, I think that is. We have one other key supporter who would like to say something and probably round off the proceedings. So, Eric Shearer.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is obviously the first time that I've been facing this way as opposed to facing the music, so I've got to get used to it. Basically, to start off with, I've got 2 confessions to make, but please don't take them too seriously. The first one is that before I came here, I used to be an avid supporter of the Wigmore Hall and go to their coffee concerts on a Sunday morning when there wasn't a congestion charge, when parking was easier and the tickets were affordable. Then somebody put me on about saying there is a medieval church in Perivale who have equally as good concerts. And of course, I've lived in Ealing all my life, didn't know where it was, explored, found it, and have been coming ever since, sitting now in the first row where I have a dedicated seat. Now, I have another confession to make, that I have a disease, but please don't take it too seriously. It's not contagious. The disease is that I collect antiques. And once you start collecting antiques, you can't stop. So the other day I was scouring my usual markets, the Portobello Market, and I found a little picture, a little oil painting of a church which may not be St. Mary's, but it's the next best thing. It's a twin, and I'd like to present it to Hugh just as a memento for this lovely speech and talk and all the rest of it, and to thank you personally for the life-changing moments that he's given me, that I have 2 to 3 concerts a week to enjoy, and they are wonderful. So thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Felicity. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, the team. You've all done wonderful work. You've given us all great pleasure. You've given a worldwide audience great pleasure, and I can't thank you more. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very kind, Eric. Thank you very much. It is Perivale. Is it? Yeah. Definitely Perivale. Well done, Eric. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
That's very special. Well, I think that rounds off proceedings. It's thank you very much for all your kind words. I've enjoyed putting this talk together because it's given me an opportunity to thank so many friends who've done so much. I stand up here basking in all the glory, but it's been a team effort, the whole thing, and I did want to make sure that I gave people credit for all their hard work. And all I can say now is that, as always, we start badgering you for money. And if you want to donate something, I have to say the performance today won't need much money. But thank you very much for being with us today. Please keep tuning in, and here's to the next 1,400 concerts. And that's it. Oh, I should say thanks to Rob Jenkins upstairs for doing the camera work, to Simon Shute for doing the sound at the back, and to my wife for doing box office. And with that, that's it, folks. Good afternoon.